All right, I have exactly 2 hours before I have to be somewhere, so it's probably not a good idea to try to film this, but I'm still going to do my best to give you guys a well thought out and good explanation. Now, the good thing is unlike survivor perks, I know killer perks a lot better, so there won't be as many mistakes, and hopefully I won't have to open up the wiki like at all. Anyway, if you're not aware, this is the week of tier lists for the full first week of April. I will be doing a tier list every single day. The first 3 are very obvious, and for the next 4, it is all going to be based on will spins that you'll see whenever we do the tier list tomorrow. But let's go ahead and jump into all of the killer perks and see how they are and what they're doing. First up, we got Bitter Murmur. Whenever a generator is completed, you see the aura of survivors within a certain radius of that generator. And then when all the generators are completed, you see the aura of all the survivors on the map for 10 seconds. Now, the hard thing about killer perk tier lists is that it is oftentimes based off the killer that you are using. So, for example, something like Bitter Murmur is useful on characters with map presence. So you've got Demogorgon, Freddy, Nurse, Blight, Spirit, Hillbilly, etc., etc. Artists, Huntress, those stuff. Killers with map presence, it's a lot better on. But killers without map presence, like Trapper, Legion, I guess Legion has a little bit of map. You guys get my point though, right? So when I'm judging these, I'm going to be trying to judge them for the entirety of the killer roster and then averaging them out, which is going to be very difficult, but I'll do my best. So for Bitter Murmur, we're going to go ahead and put it in B because it is a really good info perk and it can help you catch up if you are losing the game. I personally like this in in-game builds. So yeah, we're going to ahead and put it in B because it is a really good info perk, and I think it's honestly kind of underrated. I'm surprised more people don't run it. Next up, we have Deerstalker. I guess Deerstalker has its place in slugging builds, so we can put it in D. My only problem with Deerstalker is that I really think it's one of those effects that should just kind of be base kit. You should just be able to see the aura of a down survivor next to you, but then again, that could just be because I'm half deaf, and I have very, very hard trouble finding survivors. Like, I can hear them, I know they're here, but I can't discern where they're at because I can't hear out of one side of my head. Next up, we have Distressing. Distressing only has its use in terror radius builds or killers that rely on their terror radius, like Doctor and Legion. So I'm going to go ahead and put Distressing in D as well. I know that seems kind of weird. It's just one of those perks that really doesn't get any use outside of being in specific builds based around terror radiuses. And sometimes you can even replace it and it wouldn't matter. Next up is Noed. Noed is a very, very good perk. It is your way to come back in the end game. It is very, very standard on almost every single M1 killer in the game because it's very easy for M1 killers to lose gen pressure, especially if they don't have a lot of map presence. So once all the gens are powered, everybody becomes exposed. You become a little bit faster. The biggest weakness of Noed is definitely that it's a hex perk, and that's something that you're just going to see throughout all of the hex perks. In general throughout this tier list, is that if it's a hex perk, it suffers very greatly, and that's unfortunate. No edge, just good. It's just good. I don't understand why people think it's not. I think it is a perk that teaches baby killers to let gens be finished because they happen to have no ed, but once you learn the game, it's a great perk because you can apply pressure throughout the match and then have that comeback potential at the end. Next up is Hex Thrill of the Hunt. This is one of the weaker hex perks. All of the hex on the map are cleansed slower, and I think they're all lit as well. I can't remember. This is basically one of those perks that used to be stapled in hex builds until Undying came out, and now Undying is the staple in hex builds. It just doesn't pay you to have them cleanse totems slower. It doesn't do much. It doesn't provide enough slowdown like you would like to. It's better to have your hexes protected rather than it takes longer to cleanse them. So, we're going to leave that in D. Insidious is a meme tier perk. I know there's somebody out there like, oh, but it's actually good on the unknown now. And it's actually funny on Billy or Bubba. And you look, bro, I get it. But it's dog shit. We're not talking about meme potential. We're talking about power level. All right. Standing in one spot, waiting for the survivors to walk into your path. It's dog shit. Just stop. Iron Grasp is actually, I think I'll put it as a B tier perk. I want to put it as A tier, but it just barely misses out. So normally it takes 15 seconds for a survivor to wiggle out if they're continuously hitting great skill checks. But now with Iron Grasp, it takes 22 seconds. So it's really good for guaranteeing hooks. And on maps like, the fuck? Discord notification. On maps like swamps, mid-bitch, Batum, maps with very poor hook distribution, generally speaking, this is a good perk, but I don't like the idea of equipping perks in case you come across a certain map. So, yeah. Next up is Monstrous Shrine. I think a lot of people are going to disagree with me here, but I think Monstrous Shrine is a D tier perk. I don't think it's completely worthless that it should go in the F tier. You can theoretically put it on Scourge Hook builds and have a pretty solid synergy. And then if you've got killers that can leave the basement quickly or leave Scourge Hooks quickly, then it's also pretty good. I was thinking about trying to put it on Billy to see how it might work with like a Scourge Hook Billy build. I might try that later on, but for now I think it is just useful enough to avoid F tier. Unlike Shattered Hope. I have never seen this even during the boon era. I never saw this perk played. Shattered Hope is a perk that when you snuff a boon, it instead breaks it, and any survivors within the aura of the boon get their auras revealed for like 8 seconds or some shit. Boons, running perks in case your opponent runs a certain perk is only there for meta. But even, like I said, even during the Circle of Healing meta, where boons were everywhere, nobody was running this perk, because on the off chance that they don't have any boons, you just don't get any value out of it. And so because it's like that, I think either this perk needs to be base kit and then they need to rework this perk for something else, or you should be able to stomp out a dull totem and it reveals the aura of survivors within a certain meteor radius of the dull totem. With boons, it does like a double the radius or something. Next up is, ironically, the perk that recently got butchered. Sloppy Butcher is a C tier perk now. It used to be A tier because it just had massive amounts of slowdown. But now it's like you hit somebody, you down them or whatever, you put them on the hook, typically 20 seconds pass, they've got 70 seconds of mangled, they're like, fuck it, we don't need to heal through it, they just go do a generator, and then as soon as the generator pops, or as soon as their mangled goes away, they get up off and they do the quicker heal. It's just better, because mangled and hemorrhage are on timers now, it's just not as good. I was talking with my chat today about it actually, and one of my community members, Ambrosia, brought it up. They said that they think that the mangled nerf isn't that bad for killers like Oni or Twins, and I kind of agree. I mean, I don't know about Twins because they're the Twins main, but for Oni, I kind of agree because that extra 90 seconds of them being forced to be bleeding is good, but outside of that, every other killer that got use from it is just, they're not going to get any use from it now. The mangled nerf is just, it's bad. It's terrible. Spies from the Shadows is a very mediocre info perk. Realistically speaking, just because you're running Spies doesn't mean you're going to get any use out of it, and most of the time you're not. For beginners, sure, I guess, I'm willing to put it at the top of F tier, but realistically speaking, you're not going to be using Spies. If you're not aware, whenever someone passes by a crow, the crow goes, "Gah!" and then you get like a bubble showing where the crow got disturbed. So theoretically, you can use this to go and find where a survivor was. But the problem with that is that it goes on a cooldown. So it's not like if they're like running past a bunch of crows, all the crows are just going off and you're like tracking their movements. That's just not, it's not happening. Next up is Unrelenting. Unrelenting's a C tier perk. Whenever it decreases your miss cooldown. So if you're the type of person that is like whiffing a lot, actually this might go D tier. Yeah, I'm gonna put this D tier below distressing. If you find yourself whiffing a lot, sure, but you really shouldn't be whiffing that often. If you're getting like spun and pallet faked out and everything, it could help you, but I mean, run save instead. Next up is Whispers. I do not give a fuck what Ott says. Whispers is not good. It's not a decent perk. Whenever you are in, what, 24, 24, 32-ish meters of a survivor, this perk turns on and lets you know they're in the area. It's better than Insidious and Shattered Hope, but it's still in the useless category. Agitation is better than Iron Grasp. So whenever you whenever you're carrying a survivor and you're trying to get them to a hook, you move faster and your tear radius increases. So this synergizes well with things like Starstruck, Awakened Awareness. I put Starstruck, Awakened Awareness, and Agitation in one of my Deathslinger builds, so it's really good. But even if you're not putting it with other stuff, it just works in so many builds. It's one of those perks. I like to call it a filler perk. Filler perks aren't necessarily bad perks, but they're universal perks that will always get value, that you can easily slot out for tech perks. Tech perks are things like Franklin's, Lightborne, stuff that's made to specifically counter something you see in the lobby. So I think it's one of the better perks. Next up is Brutal Strength. I've been singing this for a while. Brutal Strength is an underrated perk. Brutal Strength allows you to damage generators and damage pallets 20% faster, and this can lead to a lot of catching survivors off guard, especially cocky survivors who like to drop a pallet and then teabag or run around in circles in front of it or something like that. You can break that pallet faster than they're expecting, fuck with their muscle memory, and catch them out really quickly. It's a really good perk, and I don't understand why more people don't like it. Next up, we have Unnerving Presence. This only works in skill check builds, but I am willing to put it in C because it can work on any killer. It's not strong enough to really get to the point of what's the word I'm looking for? To get to the point of B tier. So it's one of these, I wish I would have did this for the survivor perks yesterday, but if you want to know, this is how the survivor perks yesterday work. So we've got meta or always use. Basically, these are just perks that just should almost always be in your loadout. Then we have highly recommended, or highly recommend, so it's even. Then we have recommend. Then I have can use. In other words, it's like, oh, I guess you could use this if you want to. But then I have don't use. Don't use if you don't have to. And then I have never use, right? So this is basically how I do these tier lists. It's just something, that's how I figure out where to put things. Next up, we have the 3 perks from Wraith. They're absolutely fucking terrible. Never use them. Makes blood pools glow, puts scratch marks closer together, gives you haste whenever you get blinded. None of these are useful at any given point in time. Shadowborn is worse than them, though. Insidious is worse than them. Actually, Shadowborn can go up here. We can put Insidious. No, okay, yeah, we'll put it like that, yeah. So that's basically how this goes. They're supposed to be tracking perks. Realistically speaking, Shadowborn should have had something to do with Undetectable. I made a whole video on it, but yeah, fuck that. Next up, we have Enduring, another, do I do this as recommended or highly recommend? I think I just do this as recommended just because this is a perk that, realistically speaking, so whenever you get pallet stun, the stun is 30% less. So this is a perk that needs to be used with other perks to get its full value, but I have seen people use it as a filler perk before, and I don't exactly disagree with using it as a filler perk. It is a pretty decent perk. It's just if you're going to go with a filler perk, I would go with Agi or Brutal over Enduring. Next up is Lightborne. This is a tech perk that I recommend. But remember, this is only going in the recommended if you see 2 flashlights in the lobby. If you see 1 flashlight, fuck it. If you see 2 or more, it's a great tech perk. You can't be blinded, and when they try to blind you, you get aura reading on them for 10 seconds. So I think that this is a good, really good tech perk. Next up is Tinkerer. Tinkerer is a perk that relies on you having a lot of map presence, but it does work extremely well on a lot of killers. So whenever a gen hits 70%, the gen bubble will light up and be like, whoo, this gen is 70%. And then you'll gain undetectable for, I believe, 15 seconds, if I'm remembering correctly. That might be wrong number, but you gain undetectable for a little bit. So it's really good to be like, oh, that gen's almost finished, and you go chase people off of it. I like to run this in a lot of gen kicking builds because it's just like, you know which gen you need to go pressure. But this is also great for characters like Freddy. Freddy is really, when I do the Freddy analysis video, this is going to be one of those perks that ends up in the always use category. I swear to God it will. This perk is so good on Freddy. Next up is Nurse's Call. This perk is actually really good on Xeno too, now that I think about it. Next up is Nurse's Calling. Whenever survivors are healing within 24 meters of you, you see their aura, and then you stop seeing their aura once they stop healing. This is going to go in the can use category. I don't really like this perk. I've heard a lot of people say it's good for Pyramid Head, Spirit, and Nurse, and I agree with Nurse. Kind of Pyramid Head if you're undetectable. Spirit, I don't know about. But yeah, it's one of those perks where as soon as someone's starting to heal, you need to go, you can go and interrupt them. I've seen people combine this perk with Force Penance, which is cool, but yeah. Next up, we have Strider. Strider is a perk that makes breathing and grunting sounds louder. It's slightly better than Whispers, but, this is going to sound weird coming from a deaf person, but I think that the grunting and moaning sounds are loud enough that you don't really need this perk. I've never found any use for this perk. I used it once for my Nurse Adept, and then I've never used it again. So, yeah. Next up, we have Thana Phobia. Thana is a bad perk, guys. Thana's a bad perk. Oh, but it's good on Legion and Plague. Thana is a bad perk. Does not matter who it's on. It's fucking terrible. It is a perk that provides mediocre slowdown when everyone's injured, but the second someone dies, it's a perk that completely shuts off, and it loses more than half its value the moment you kill someone. And the slowdown is not enough to matter. I understand that survivors are like really weird creatures. They see a red bar and they start freaking the fuck out on how to get rid of it. And they see the Thana and they're like, oh, we've all got to heal to get rid of Thana. But trust me, if you just power through the Thana, it's a lot better than stopping to heal. Thana's a bad perk. Stop using it. Stop suggesting it for Plague and Legion. It's not good. Next up, Dying Light. This is worse than Thana. This is worse than Thana. This actually might be F tier. Yeah, this is F tier. Yeah, this is F tier, dude. Dying Light. So everybody who's not your obsession does things slower, but your obsession does things faster. And then it turns off when the obsession dies. It's meant to go into Michael's theme of like not killing the obsession, like saving the obsession for the last player in the game. But let's be realistic with ourselves. You're just not going to get enough slowdown out of this for it to matter. So no, I don't like Dying Light. Play with Your Food, on the other hand, is an interesting perk. Now, I put Play with Your Food in the don't use if you don't have to, only because you lose stacks if you even attempt a swing. And I think attempt a power too. Like, you lose stacks for doing anything. If you lost stacks for hitting people, I would understand. But like, you get this haste from not finishing your chase with the obsession. So you'll chase the obsession, leave them alone, get your stack, and then you go to swing on even one person and boom, it's gone. It's a perk that is good to an extent of you need to be in a very specific killer with a very specific build to use it. The only reason it's not in the never use category is because that extra 5% haste is useful. But that's it. Next up is Save. Save is a meta perk. Whenever you hit someone who's not the obsession, gain a token, up to 8 tokens. You get a severely reduced cooldown on your swings. So you can hit somebody, go whoop, wipe off the blade, and then go straight back for him. This recently got nerfed to where M2 killers can't use it now. But you were never using it on M2 killers to begin with. So, yeah, now it's whenever the obsession loses a health state. Because if you hit the obsession, you lose 2 tokens. And I've seen people throw their games to save the best for last stacks. Stop doing that. it's a good perk regardless. You're going to be, any kind of like cooldown on your swings that lets you get back into the chase faster is just good. Next up, we have Devour. Now, it is a Hex Totem, so it's unfortunately going to go on the bottom of recommended, but of the Hex Totems, it's definitely one of the best. You get a token every time someone unhooks 32 meters away from you, and then you get haste at 3, exposed at 4, and a free Mori at 5. I almost never get it to the free Mori. Normally about the time it gets to the exposed is when it gets cleansed. Sometimes before that, because it is a Hex Totem. But in terms of Hex perks, like I said, it's really good. Speaking of good Hex perks, Ruin has made one hell of a comeback. Before, Ruin would turn off as soon as someone died, so it suffered from both being a Hex perk and turning off because you're winning the game, but now it doesn't turn off when someone dies. So it's actually really good now. It's really, really good. It came back from the dead. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. It's a really good fucking perk. It works really well on characters who can pressure gens like Artist, Unknown, Knight, Freddy, you know, characters who can pressure gens really well. It works really well on those. And it also combos kind of good with things like Grim Embrace, because like it'll kick people off of gens and it won't regress while the gen's blocked, but as soon as the gen unblocks, it'll start regressing. So yeah, it's made its way into a really good spot. Third Seal, you can use Third Seal. This is probably one of the weaker this is one of the weaker Hex Totems. So Blind on Survivors is just not good. It's better than I used to think it was back in the day, but it's still not that great. It counters Windows of Opportunity. Windows of Opportunity counters itself if the player doesn't know what the fuck they're doing. If the player's just W keying from yellow bar to yellow bar, then you don't really need to worry about Windows. It's more useful. I found use for this on Legion and Plague because it helps to prevent fast unhooks. Like, yeah, they get the bubble to know where the unhook is, but sometimes that bubble, you know, after that bubble goes away, it can kind of fuck with people. The only problem is it's a Hex Totem, so it's not as good, as it should be. Next up, we got Monitor and Abuse. It's a pretty decent stealth perk. Do I recommend? I think I can recommend it. It's probably going to be at the bottom of recommended, almost in the can use category. It's just a pretty decent stealth perk. Whenever you're not in chase, your terror radius gets reduced by 8 meters. So it's more useful for things like Xenomorph, Myers, Huntress, even like characters with smaller terror radiuses. It's better for because it allows you to get closer to survivors a lot easier. So it's definitely not bad. I just think it's kind of teetering on the edge between can use and recommended. So, next up, Overcharge, a pretty solid gen kicking perk. We can put it over here. Whenever you kick a gen, the gen starts regressing at 150% up to 200% over the course of X amount of seconds. And it puts a great skill check on the gen. So if if you kick it, survivor gets back on the gen, they try to work on it, a great skill check pops up. Now, the higher in MMR you go, the easier it is for people to hit skill checks. But if they're not expecting it, it could be a free 10% and let you know someone's on that gen. So Overwhelming Presence, while killers or survivors in your terror radius, they lose item efficiency. This is a pseudo counter to flashlights. I wouldn't run this at all, like ever, honestly. I think I'm going to put this like down here. I just don't think it's good enough to even consider. Shit perk. We'll come back to you. 2 shit perks. People are going to go, oh, but with Weaving Spiders, Territorial Imperative is better. No, it's not. No, it's not. You want to know the secret to counter Weaving Spiders? I'm going to tell you. At the beginning of the game, go down to the basement. If you see Assault Circle as the killer, someone in the match has Weaving Spiders. If you don't, no one has Weaving Spiders. Once you know someone has Weaving Spiders, all you got to do is a couple times a match, just take a trip down there and check on them. It takes 2 minutes to crank that motherfucking thing off. All right, every so often, you're passing by the basement on a gen patrol or during a chase, you pop down there, you go, is anybody here? No, cool, and you go back, you leave the fuck out of it. Okay, this is not, Weaving Spiders has not made this perk any more useful, okay? And this might actually be the most useless perk in the game. I'm not even fucking kidding you. You get undetectable when you're bloodlusted. This might actually be the most useless perk in the game. Huntress Lullabi is a pretty bad hex perk. We'll put it at the bottom of can use. Every time you hook someone, you get a token. And then for each token, the survivor's skill check sound warning is delayed. And then at 5 tokens, they get no warning. This perk, in my opinion, needs to be buffed to where if you cleanse it, it keeps its tokens and its effect. If you know what I mean? It's like, if you get 3 hooks, then it keeps its tokens and its effect after it's cleansed, but you can't gain any more tokens, is the way I think it should work. Because as it stands right now, it's pretty bad. I'm gonna put it in D tier, honestly. I put it in don't use if you don't have to. It only really works on skill check doctor, and even he finds it getting cleansed very quickly. So yeah. BBQ Chili, one of the best info perks in the game. I do not understand people who are like, oh, but it doesn't give blood points anymore, so it's not good. Sir, it gives you massive amounts of information. And any killer with map presence, oh my god, dude. Demogorgon, Wraith, Billy, Artist, Huntress, Blight, Nurse, Spirit, Chucky even, fucking, like, what? What do you mean? Xeno, what do you mean, bro? It's one of the best info perks in the fucking game. Don't fuck with me. This perk is amazing. Like, yeah, if you're playing something like Trapper, then don't fucking use it. But, like, come on, man. Its only real weakness is small maps, but you just don't run into them enough for it to, really affect you. Franklin's Demise is a pretty good tech perk. I think we'll put it right here below Lightborne. Hit a survivor with an M1, they drop their item, and it slowly loses charges while it's on the ground. So that's good. It's a tech perk that I think is more of a counter to medkits than flashlights. You can try to use it to counter toolboxes, but most of the time, by the time you find someone with a toolbox, they've already gotten their use they wanted out of it. So I guess, like, if you're scared of Sabo squads, you could run this, but I really wouldn't worry about it. Next up is Knockout. Whenever you hit somebody with an M1, their aura cannot be read by any survivors outside of 16 meters. This is a Sluggers build, or this is a Sluggers perk. But it is surprisingly underrated in terms of, like, just general perk usage. Like, I have used it a couple times on my pigs, on pig builds, and it's pretty fucking decent. It's pretty fucking decent in those builds. So I definitely think it does have its uses here and there outside of slugging builds. So yeah. Blood Warden. I feel bad about this because Blood Warden actually isn't terrible. It's just its uses are almost non-existent. So Blood Warden is a perk where when you hook someone after an exit gate has been open, the exit gates are blocked for 60 seconds. The problem with this is that even though the in-game collapse is technically a 2-minute timer, it gets cut in half when someone is on the hook or downed. So if you got someone on the hook, it goes from a 2-minute timer to a 4-minute timer. And so this isn't as useful. Now, if you're running something like Noed, you can technically open a gate, hook someone you've just downed, and then the gate is blocked, and then you can use your Noed to get pressure that way. I think the far more useful part of its effect is actually seeing the auras of survivors inside the exit gates. But in terms of power level, it's just not that good. I like to run it sometimes for funsies because it is a nice little surprise and it can get wins from time to time. But realistically speaking, it's not good enough. Next up, we have Fire Up, an in-game build. Every time a generator is completed, all of your action speeds, that's your pickup, your hooking, your breaking, your vaulting, all increase by 4%. It's not terrible. And I think bottom of recommended is actually a pretty good spot for it. I think it's a low-key slept-on perk because it's one of those perks that allows you to flip the script as the game goes on. Trust me, a fucking Myers vaulting a pallet or vaulting a window 24% faster while he's in tier 3 is really scary. You combine this with stuff like Bamboozle or Superior Anatomy, and you are flying over those vaults, dude. Absolutely fucking just. I put this in a build with Bamboozle, Superior Anatomy, and the new Unknown perk, and I started just getting just the most random fucking hits that I should not have been getting because I just fucking fly over the vault. It's really, really good. Next up is Remember Me. People might be surprised, but I'm gonna highly recommend it. So every time you do a damage to the obsession, you gain a stack, and then at the end of up to a max of 4 stacks, and then at the end, at the end of the game, the exit gates are opened slower based on the amount of stacks you have, and I think it can turn it from 16 seconds to 30, if I'm not mistaken, with full stacks. It might be something like, it might be 21. It's one of those two. I'm trying to remember, because I think it's 4 extra seconds per stack, which would be 28 seconds. Yeah, it's something like that. The only drawback to it is the obsession can ignore this slowdown. So this is a perk that you run in the in game, and you make sure the obsession's dead before the end game comes. Next up is Make Your Choice. This is a perk that sees its uses with characters who can get back to hooks faster. They can get back to hooks fast, not faster, but really fast. Whenever someone unhooks the obsession more than 32 meters away from you, they scream and become exposed. The thing that I don't really like about this perk is that there's no way to tell who's exposed if you either A, don't hear the scream, because half deaf, or B, they're running Calm Spirit, or whatever, or C, you can't tell the difference in the screams. Like, oh, I heard a female scream, but I don't know whose voice it was. You know what I mean? Or maybe something that there's 2 Megs, and you hear Meg scream. Okay, which Meg was it? You know what I mean? So it's only really useful on characters who can get back to hooks fast. Outside of that, I really wouldn't use it. Never mind. I'm sorry. Wait, no. Between Hangman's Trick and Beast of Prey, which is the most useless perk in the game? That's a really good fucking question. Because Hangman's Trick is dog shit. Hangman's Trick says that whenever you are carrying a survivor, you see the auras of other survivors within 10 meters of a Scourge Hook. Brother, who fucking cares? Just run Awakened Awareness, bro. Just run Awakened. This perk is stupid. You don't care if someone is within 10 meters of a Scourge Hook. You just don't. The change to this perk, it's really funny, because when they changed this perk, they said, oh, we didn't want to just give this, for aura reading around the whole map, so we changed it to a Scourge Hook to make it more balanced. I can tell you right now that if this perk just merely said, when you're carrying a survivor, reveal the aura of other survivors within 10 meters of a hook, within fucking 15 meters of a hook, it still would not have become a problem perk. At most, it would have gotten up to don't use if you don't have to. It's just not a good fucking perk, dude. It's just not. It's, with Beast of Prey, at least you can maybe use the Undetectable for a little bit of mind games, maybe, sort of, kind of. Yeah, Hangman's Trick is the most useless perk in this game. Surveillance. Kick a Djinn, the Djinn turns yellow, and then whenever the Djinn stops regressing, it turns white. This is actually, I'm gonna put it below Make Your Choice. I wouldn't really call it a good info perk. I see people run it, and I'm not entirely sure why. I would rather run something like Overcharge, or hell, even Call of Brine, which works a lot better. But yeah, so I'm just not a big fan of this. Bamboozle. I can highly recommend Bamboozle. This is your counter to Shack. You vault Shack window, block it off, cut the power of Shack in half. If Shack pallet is down, that's even better. That makes Shack basically a free loop for you. Not only do you vault windows 30% faster, but it blocks them off as well. I do think that the block should last a little bit longer. It's only 16 seconds. I would prefer 20 seconds, but that's just me. I'm actually going to put it above Remember Me for sure. Next up is Thana Phobia. This is another terror radius perk. Whenever survivors are in your terror radius, they heal slower, and skill checks happen really, really fucking fast. Bottom of can use. This is a perk you don't really get a lot of use out of. I see Whiskers or Wesker players run it a lot, but not not really that useful even on them. I've seen doctors use it, but again, not really that useful even on them. Interestingly, it does have some unique synergy with Dark Devotion and Unforeseen. Unforeseen, by the way, whenever you kick a gen, it puts your terror radius on the gen. It's down here. We'll talk about it a little bit later. But yeah, so that's, it does have some interesting synergies with those, but probably not good enough to matter. Pop Goes the Weasel is going to go in its meta place. Pop, whenever you hook somebody, you get to kick, the next time you kick a gen, you blow that gen for 25% of its current progression. I've had people tell me that this isn't good because if you kick a gen with, 10%, then it doesn't pop it for as much. But the ability to knock off 25% of the work the survivors have done is just really good. I run this in a bunch of my builds, especially no gen kicking build can go without this perk. It's just really fucking good, and I don't know why so many people think it's not, Haunted Grounds, a Hex perk that whenever it is cleansed, there are 2 Hex perks spawn on the map. Whenever it's cleansed, every survivor is exposed for 45 seconds. I've actually found quite a bit of use out of this. I like it because it's a Hex perk that is intended to be cleansed. So I like to run it sometimes. I might run it on my Hex build on Wraith. Ooh. Now that I think about that. I got to remember that for tomorrow. In any case, it is a pretty good Hex perk. It's probably one of the best Hex perks in the game, right up there with Devour, for sure. Devour and Ruin. Just the art of exposing survivors because they see red totem, they cleanse red totem. So it's just, even in higher MMRs, you see red totem, you cleanse red totem. So yeah, it's really, really good. It's a good trap. I really enjoy it. Rancor is one of those meme perks. Whenever the gens are finished, it acts like Bitter Murmur. And then at the end of the match, the obsession becomes exposed and can become moried. So I'll put it probably second in can use. It's not that bad. It's not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad for sure. Next up is Spirit Fury. Spirit Fury, you break a couple of pallets. The next time a pallet is dropped on your head, it breaks for free. You still get stunned, but you combine it with Enduring, and it becomes a really, really fucking good perk. The reason I'm putting it in highly recommended is because it's a good anti-pallet perk. So if you're finding yourself just really having a lot of trouble with dealing with pallets, this is one of those perks that just does really well in a pallet shredding build, and it's also a pretty decent filler perk. So we can leave that at there. Discordance is a really good information perk. Whenever more than 2 survivors or whenever 2 survivors are working on a gen, the gen highlights in yellow. This is very similar to Tinkerers, where it lets you know where you need to apply your pressure the most. Unfortunately, I think the reason I can't put it in highly recommended is because your goal, 2 survivors on a gen is less dangerous than 2 survivors on 2 separate gens. But if you're a killer player who find yourself getting lost a lot, this is one of the better info perks in the game for you to use. Next up is Iron Maiden. It's only useful on Huntress and Trickster. I used to think, and somebody can tell me if I'm wrong here, but I used to think that this allowed Dredge to get out of lockers faster, but someone said it doesn't. So I don't know what to believe anymore. For now, we're going to put it in the middle of the can use category, just because it's only useful on really 2 killers. The exposed isn't long enough for you to get a lot of use out of. Yeah, it's just not as great as it could be. Next up, we have Corrupt. This is Corrupt. This is Mad Grit. This is a backpack build. Backpack perk. Whenever you are carrying a survivor, you suffer no cooldown whenever you take a swing, and whenever you hit a survivor, the wiggle timer pauses for the survivor you're carrying. So, this is actually can go in recommended. Honestly, I might put it like up here. It's a pretty decent filler perk. It's better, of course, in backpack builds. You do this, Agitation, Iron Grasp, Starstruck, and you become a fucking menace. But it actually has its place as a filler perk, I think. I think it's actually not that bad and does have its place there. Next up, we have Corrupt. Now, I have on record as saying that Corrupt is not as good as people say it is. I have never been in a situation where Corrupt has slowed the game down enough significantly that I am able to get full use out of it. So I'm going to put Corrupt at the very top of can use because it is technically a good slowdown, but I cannot in good conscience recommend it because I have never had a if it blocked 4 gens, yes. Or alternatively, if it worked like a lethal pursuer for gen blocking, so like it blocks 3 gens at the beginning, and then every time a gen gets blocked, it gets blocked for like an extra 5 seconds, then it could go in my recommended, right? But as it stands, I do not think this perk is as good as people say it is, and I really don't understand why people think it's good.
If you've been missing streams and want to see live gameplay, then go ahead and check out my YouTube channel, the Kaiservods, where I upload every game that I play in multi-hour compilations. We also have a collection of short compilations of clips from stream. We'll see you over there. Link is in the description.
Dark Devotion, a perk that I can recommend. I'm actually going to put it up here. I think Dark Devotion's kind of underrated. Whenever the Obsession loses a health state by any means, your terror radius ends up on them and you become undetectable. So it does throw your terror radius. It's not a fake terror radius, it throws your terror radius. So it works with perks like Thana Phobia, Unnerving Presence, Overwhelming Presence, things like that. It can also end up being one of those perks that's like, it can also end up being one of those perks that makes people scared to go for a hook or something, or an unhook, I mean. Or a heal even, you know what I mean? And also, the terror radius scares bots. So you're having trouble with bots, it's a counter. Memes aside, it is really good. Infectious Fright, I can put down here in recommended as well. Whenever you knock a survivor to the ground, every survivor within your terror radius screams, reveals their location. This is good if you have been running into a lot of background player users, because you down it, you're like, oh, they're over there, there's somebody waiting for a save. It lets you play a little bit safer, play a little bit easier. Unfortunately, this perk is also best known for being combined with things like Forced Hesitation, which we'll get to later on. That's what you kind of need it for. I don't think, actually, I'll probably drop this down to below Make Your Choice. Now that I think about it, I don't think I can recommend it. It's one of those perks that's not offensively bad, but it's not good enough to recommend either. Next up is Furtive Chase. You want to talk about glow-ups, dude. You want to talk about fucking glow-ups? Furtive Chase is amazing. Whenever you hook the Obsession, you gain haste and undetectable for, I think, 10 seconds. And then whenever someone unhooks the Obsession, they become the Obsession. So you can basically cycle this perk throughout the entire match without risk losing it for the most part. Until like very close to the end game. Like you'll get like a minimum of like 4 procs off of this. And trust me, hooking someone and then becoming undetectable and speeding toward your objective, very, very good. I use this perk on Slinger, along with Awakened Awareness, Agitation, and Starstruck. So good. So good. Next up is I'm All Ears, a very, very good info perk that I can highly recommend. Whenever a survivor takes a rush action, so they fast vault a window or a pallet, or they jump into a locker, you see their aura for 7 seconds, I believe. This helps you with mind games. This helps you with anti-loop. This, this video is actually on the channel. It's the first Dead by Daylight video I ever made. I was playing Huntress and running I'm All Ears, and a Meg quick and quieted into a locker, and I saw her aura of her getting into the locker, so I was able to get her. I knew where she went. Even though the quick and quiet went off, so I didn't hear her, I saw her getting into the locker before the locker hit her aura. It's really, really good. Thrilling Tremors is another perk that is a can use. Whenever you pick up a survivor, after you down them, all generators not being worked on get blocked for 16 seconds. This is less of a slowdown perk and more of an info perk. You know actively which generators are being worked on. The problem is that it has too many requirements. You have to find a survivor, down a survivor, pick up the survivor, and then while you're carrying the survivor, you need to swing your camera around to look and see which gens are being worked on. There's just better, you know, you've got Tinkerers, you've got Discordance, you've got fucking even Surveillance, you've got fucking Call of Brine. You've got so many perks that let you know which generators are being worked on that have far less requirements and are far easier to understand and are far easier to pull off. The only thing that keeps this above Surveillance is it provides a teeny bit of slowdown. So I can recommend at least that. Claustrophobia got a pretty decent buff recently. Whenever a generator is completed, all vault locations are blocked for 16 seconds. This is actually really good. Not good enough to recommend, but I think I can put it up here. Do I put it above Make Your Choice? I don't know. I think, no, I don't put it above Make Your Choice. Yes, actually, you get more consistent value from it. So a generator gets completed. You're chasing somebody across the map. Let's say you're in shack or whatever. Generator gets completed. Window gets blocked. The survivor goes, ah! And then you down them. Not bad. Mindbreaker is taking its spot up here on the top of the highly recommended, just barely outside the meta. And that's just because exhaustion perks, while they are a problem, they're not as much of a problem as they used to be. But whenever a survivor is working on a generator, they are exhausted and blinded, and then for 5 seconds after they get out off of the generator, the effect lingers. So this is used as a counter to Sprint Burst, Lithe, Balance, Dead Hard, whatever the case may be. It is your anti-exhaustion perk. You know what? We can put it in meta, I think. I think we can put it in meta. I think you run into exhaustion perks often enough that it can be put in meta. So yeah, sure. Surge is a meta perk. Whenever you down a survivor with M1, all generators within 32 meters, 24 meters, it's something like that. It's either 24 or 32 meters. I want to say it's 24. Explode for 8%. Now, I used to think that they exploded for 10 to 15%, but it's always been 8%, apparently. So, joke's on me. Still, the ability to passively slow down generators without, like, much input from you is just way too fucking good, and this is, like, every M1 killer should be running Surge. Every single one. If you're an M1 killer, run Surge. Blood Echo. Blood Echo, it got hella nerfed in the with the Mangled nerf. Whenever you hook a survivor, all survivors that are injured become hemorrhaged and exhausted. So this is an anti-exhaustion perk, but I'm gonna recommend it, but I'm not gonna highly recommend it because this is very what's the word I'm looking for? This is very dependent on the killer you're running. If you're running a hit and run killer or somebody like Plague and Legion, it's good. But outside of that, I wouldn't really use it that much. Next up, Nemesis. Whenever you get stunned by any means, the person who stuns you becomes the obsession and you see their aura for 10 seconds. This is usually paired with things like Rancor for Rancor Roulette, Furtive Chase, basically other obsession-related perks. So I personally like to combine this with Furtive and Make Your Choice so I know who did the unhook. But by itself, I could probably put it up here just because the aura reading after being stunned is very useful. But outside of that, I wouldn't use it. Zenshin is useless. Here's the thing. Why is Zenshin useless? But Windows of Opportunity is highly recommended, or even meta. I forget where I put it. The reason being is because you as the killer know where you've been. You as the killer know what pallets have been broken, what pallets have been dropped. Okay? You don't need that information. I know. The Aranad, I think it was Aranad, made that fucking like 500 fucking page clown guide, and in it was like, Zenshin Tactics is one of the best for clown. I don't care. this isn't a good perk, guys. It's just not. It's not a good perk for killer. You have the information of where pallets are. You have the information of which pallets have been broken. You don't need Zenshin tactics. Dead Man Switch. Highly recommend. It's one of the better slowdown perks. After you hook a survivor, Dead Man Switch activates. Anytime a survivor gets off of a generator within that time span, the generator is blocked for the rest of the 30 seconds. This is paired with a lot of other perks, but I don't see anything wrong with running it by itself. It's better with other perks, Pain Resonance specifically, but in general terms, it's just a really good fucking perk. Gearhead. Gearhead is not underrated, guys. It's not. There's somebody in my community. Hey, I know he's here. I know you're watching it. I know you're watching this, Stinky. Gearhead is not underrated. Stop saying it's fucking underrated. It's trash. Here's what Gearhead does. Whenever you injure a survivor, the next time a survivor does hits a good skill check, their aura is revealed for like, I don't know, 30 seconds or something. Just use barbecue. Just use barbecue. You know why I'm saying that? Because this perk is only going to really ever trigger in chase or when you down survive somebody and you're hooking them. So you down someone, you hook them, and then you're like, oh, there's aura reading on that Jin. But here's the kicker. If they're behind the Jin, you don't get the aura reading. I would just rather barbecue. Or fucking floods. Anything else. Anything else. But you can use it. It's not offensively horrible. Retribution. Every time a survivor is near of a dull totem, their aura gets revealed. Or Hex Totem? No. No, that's Undying I'm thinking of. Okay. Retribution, whenever this totem is cleansed, it's another trap totem like Haunted Grounds. It's actually paired very well with Haunted Grounds, but whenever the totem gets cleansed, for the next 45 seconds, every survivor is oblivious, and then you see their auras for 12 seconds, question mark? So it's a pretty good trap perk. We'll put it right below Haunted Grounds, I think, but mostly it synergizes well with Haunted Grounds. But it's not terrible. Forced Penance. Whenever you interrupt survivor's healing, Whenever a survivor finishes healing another survivor, they scream and become oblivious. Yes. No, this is Deathbound. This is Forced Penance. Okay, this is Deathbound. Survivor finishes healing another survivor, they scream and become oblivious for 30 seconds, I believe. Honestly, I wouldn't use this perk. It's not very good. Yeah, I'd honestly put it like down here. Yeah, don't use it. Forced Penance is the one whenever you interrupt a heal, the survivor who was doing the healing, I believe, becomes broken. This is another perk that's just not really that great. It's better than Forced Penance, but I wouldn't really use it. Trail of Torment. Poor Trail of Torment, dude. So Trail of Torment is a perk that whenever you kick a generator, you become undetectable until that generator stops regressing. But the generator gets highlighted in yellow to survivors. Now that we have Unforeseen, which just straight up kick a generator, put your terror radius on the generator, you're undetectable for 30 seconds. Trail of Torment's just not good anymore, guys. It's bottom of don't use if you don't have to. It's just not good. Just run Unforeseen. It's the same thing with Hangman's Trick. Why run Hangman's Trick when I have Awakened Awareness? It does the job of another perk, but worse. Dragon's Grip. After you kick a gen, mark the gen. The next time a survivor gets on the gen, they scream and become exposed for 30 seconds. I've never found much use in this perk, but I think I can put it in, like, the top of can use, because it theoretically has good uses in a gen kicking build. I just think that there are better perks that can go in its place. Next up, we have Hex Crowd Control. After a... Wait. Sorry, this is Hex Blood Favor. I'm stupid. Hex Blood Favor. After you injure a survivor, all pallets within 16 meters, 20 meters, something like that, of the survivor are blocked for like 15 seconds. This is really good Hex perk. I can recommend it. Do I highly recommend it? No, but I can recommend it. Especially if you're an M1 killer, this is a really good counter to pallet drops, and it works with any injure. So if you Huntress Hatchet somebody or Blight Rush someone, it works. Next up is Undying. This is a perk that obviously only gets used with other Hex perks. And because it is only ever used with other Hex perks, it will go at the top of the can use because it becomes recommended anytime you're running more than one Hex perk. But if you're not running more than one Hex perk, who gives a fuck? Next up, Coup de Grace. Coup de Grace is a recommended... Actually, I think I'm going to put Coup de Grace as a highly recommended perk. Whenever a generator gets completed, you get a... you get 2 tokens. You can lunge and use a token to extend the lunge by 80%. This catches a lot of survivors off guard. It lets you get hits you normally wouldn't get. It's a perk for coming back at the end game. It's very, very good. Very good. Ever since they buffed it to 2 tokens per gen instead of 1. Very good. Hoarders, useless. Don't use it. Anytime a survivor interacts with a chest or an item, you get notified to their location. Who fucking cares? It's terrible. Don't use it. I don't care. Oppression. Oppression is a perk I'm kind of sad about. I could put it in the can use category. Whenever you kick a generator, 3 random generators start regressing as well. And anybody who's working on those generators gets a great skill check. The problem with Oppression and what keeps it from the recommended category is the fact that it's on an 80-second cooldown. If it was 60 seconds, it would probably end up in recommended. Now we have Hex Crowd Control. This is a Hex perk while the totem is lit. Anytime a survivor vaults a window, that window gets blocked for 16 seconds, something like that, 15, maybe 12. Because it's a Hex perk, it's fairly weak, and if you want, like, window counters, you just use Bamboozle instead. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put Crowd Control probably above Blood Warden. No Way Out, one of the best perks in the game. This, every time you hook a survivor, you get a token, and then whenever the end game comes... Sorry, every time you hook a survivor for the first time, you get a token. Then whenever the end game comes around, the exit gates get blocked, and you get a loud noise notification of which exit gate got touched. And they get blocked for like 60 seconds. Like, it's a full minute that they're blocked. So this gives you a lot of time to try to turn a match around. It just even like saves it. So like if you got somebody on hook, like you second hook someone and then they like the thing goes off, that person's second hook state lasts as long as these are blocked. So you will get a lot of use out of this. And it's just a really good in-game perk, and I think it goes in the meta. Starstruck is a perk I can recommend. Whenever you're carrying a survivor, any survivors in your terror radius are exposed for 30 seconds. But they're, every survivor is exposed once they either leave your terror radius or you put the survivor down or on a hook. The exposed extends for 30 seconds. So this is a really good perk. And then this perk goes on a cooldown for 60 seconds. So you can actually use the perk's timer to kind of tell how long people are exposed that were in your area. So this is definitely a recommended perk for sure. Next up, we have Eruption. I think Eruption is low-key still really good. I think it's still low-key really good. I know that after the nerf where it was like, oh, you're not incapacitated anymore. Like, it's not meta anymore, obviously. But I do think it's recommended. It's just one of those perks that, you know, you kick 3 gens, then you down someone, then all 3 of those gens explode. And if someone's working on it, you get a little bit of aura reading. But realistically, the slowdown that it provides is just really good. I don't think it's bad at all. Next up, we have Hysteria. Let's see if I remember this right. Whenever you injure a survivor, they become oblivious for 30 seconds, 35 seconds, something like that. I believe it's oblivious. You can use it. It's not great, but you can use it. I know Rowby right now is shitting his pants, but this perk is not good, Rowby. Please stop fucking recommending this perk on every goddamn Jerks Guide, I beg of you. Next up is Lethal Pursuer, one of the best perks in the game. It's a very highly recommended perk. The only reason I don't put it in meta is because it is a perk that is used in aura builds and mostly only aura builds. But it provides you very good early game pressure. You see where all the survivors are, the aura of every survivor at the beginning of the match for 9 seconds, and then every aura reading effect you have is extended by 2 extra seconds. So that's why this goes in aura reading builds a lot. But realistically speaking, it's a perk that just gives you a lot of good early game pressure, and I very, very highly recommend it. Like I said, it just doesn't go into the meta because it's only used with aura reading perks, and there really aren't that many aura reading perks. I don't even think there are any aura reading perks in the meta right now. So next up, we have Deadlocked. Every time a generator is completed, the generator with the most progress gets blocked for 30 seconds, 45 seconds, one of those two. This is a perk to stop gen rushing specifically. It stops back-to-back blowing of gens. Unfortunately, in today's meta, one of the big problems is that survivors generally will be on 3 gens at one time during a chase, instead of 2, generally speaking, but it's still meta because it just stops gen rushing, and gen rush is the meta. Next up is Plaything. Highly recommend Plaything. Every time you hook a survivor, a Hex Totem on the map lights up, and that survivor is oblivious as long as the Hex Totem is lit. One of the big things about Plaything, and one of the reasons that it is used so much, is that it provides not only oblivious, but additional slowdown, and it also has its uses in Pentimento builds. We'll get to Pentimento when we get to it. Next up, we have Scourge Hook, Gift of Pain. This actually got shadow buffed with the recent Mangled change. So whenever you hook a survivor on a Scourge Hook, they become mangled and hemorrhaged for X amount of seconds. And then once they are healed, they repair gens slower. So basically the way this got shadow buffed is, before, survivors would either choose to be slowed down, choose to be one hit away from death, or choose the slowdown. Now, they basically always choose the slowdown because they just wait out the mangled, and then they heal, and then they're automatically slowed down. So this perk used to be in my, actually, I think it was always kind of in my recommended, just not very high, but I'm gonna knock it up a couple of notches. Because it is a very slept on perk, and it did get shadow buffed recently. Next up is Grim Embrace. This is another meta perk whenever you hook a survivor and move more than 60 meters away from the hook. Granted, the survivor does not have to still be on the hook. So if you hook a survivor, somebody unhooks them right behind you, you flip around, you chase them away from that hook. As soon as you get out of 16 meters, the generators are blocked for 16 seconds? 15 seconds. And then, and this only happens the first time you hook a survivor. Once you hook all 4 survivors, the gens are then blocked for like 40 seconds or something like it's a stupid long time. So this is a really good slowdown. This is the kind of perk that if you got really good early game pressure, you're able to put off any generator being finished until you have like 6 hooks in play, which makes this just extreme. I think actually I'll put this above Deadlocked. This is just a very good fucking perk. Just extremely good. Next up is Pentimento. Hex Pentimento. Whenever a totem has been broken, you see its aura. You can relight it. So 1 token relit, 30% slower repair speed on gens. 2 tokens, 30% slower healing speed. 3 tokens, 30% slower cleansing speed. 4 tokens, 30% slower exit gate speed. And then 5 tokens blocks all the gens. I believe I got that in the right order. You mostly use this for the first effect, and this goes in a lot of hex builds because hexes are going to get cleansed anyway. I could put Pentimento in recommended, but only if you're running it with other hex totems, because nobody is running fucking nobody's cleansing totems without hexes in play unless you're doing an archive. Next up, we have Pain Resonance, the single best. It's the second best slowdown in the game. So it's a Scourge Hook. Whenever you hook a survivor on a Scourge Hook for the first time, it blows the gen with the most progression for 25% of the total progression bar. This can only be used 4 times a match, obviously, but this is very, very good. I don't know if I have to explain why it's good. You basically get a lot of pressure from this. And then when you combine it with things like DMS, you just get massive amounts of information and slowdown at the same time. Very good perk. Next up is Call of Brine. Whenever you kick a gen, that gen is highlighted in yellow. It regresses at 200%, I believe. And then there's something, yeah, you get a loud noise notification whenever somebody starts working on that generator. So you know when someone gets back on the gen. So very good slowdown, very good information. I put it above Overcharge in the recommended. It's not bad. Next up is Merciless Storm. Whenever a generator reaches 90%, until the generator is completed, the survivor is hit with continuous skill checks. And if they miss a skill check, the generator blows for 10%, and then it is blocked for 30 seconds. So it's a pretty decent slowdown. The biggest problem with it, honestly, is that it relies on survivors missing skill checks, and that's just not necessarily that great. But I can still put it in the can use category. Floods of Rage is a fairly decent info perk. I don't really run Floods as much as I used to. I run it on Nurse because it combines really well with Pain Res, and it gives your Scourge Hooks a reason to be there after Pain Res has used all its tokens. But whenever a survivor is unhooked from a Scourge Hook, you see the aura of all survivors who weren't on the hook for 10 seconds. So it's pretty decent for information. I don't run it as much as I used to because there are just better info perks out there like Barbecue and Tinkerers and even I'm All Ears, stuff like that. But generally speaking, it's a pretty decent one. Darkness Revealed. Whenever you open a locker, the aura of all survivors are within 8 meters of a locker are revealed to you. This is a very bad perk. I use it on Huntress, and I'm probably going to take it off soon, because while it does get very good value on maps where lockers tend to be near generators or lockers tend to be in closed spaces, it's pretty good. But realistically speaking, it's just not enough to get a ton of use out of in vast majority of situations, especially with the fact that they've been very stringent. They've been very stingy on locker spawns recently. That's something I really hope that they take a look at. Next up is Dissolution. I don't care how many times you guys try to convince me this is a good perk. It's not. It is not a good perk. I don't care. It's not good. Whenever you injure a survivor for the next, 30 seconds, the next time a survivor fast vaults any pallet on the map, fast vaults a pallet within your terror radius, the pallet immediately breaks. This just doesn't get as much use, dude. I made a video about this perk way back in the day, like early days, like before I even had like 500 subscribers. I made a video about this perk, and people were like, you just got to use it. You just got to use it on blank, 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 blank character. I tried it on all those characters. I tried it for dozens of games. I saw it proc like 3 times. It's just not a good perk. I don't care. Fight me. Septic Touch. I forget the conditions for this perk. It causes exhaustion, doesn't it? Fuck. I know it's a bad perk, but I forget the conditions for it. So give me a second. Why, please, I dragged you to the other monitor. Don't do this to me. All right, let me see here. What does this perk even fucking do? Whenever a survivor performs a healing action when they are inside your terror radius, that survivor suffers from blindness and exhaustion. And then it lingers after the action is interrupted. So does it not do anything if they finish it? Is that what that means? Yeah, this isn't good at all. Who cares about blindness? I mean, exhausted is pretty good, but they have to be in your terror radius. And yeah, we're going to put this here. Just you see and leave that right there. Anyway, Awakened Awareness. Whenever you're carrying a survivor, every survivor within 10 meters of you, 20 meters, something like that, their auras are revealed. But as soon as you hook or drop the survivor, their auras are no longer revealed. And no, this does not work with Lethal Pursuer because there's no timer on the aura. So we're going to go ahead and put this in the can use category. There. It's not great, but hey, if you were like Hangman's Trick, I wish I had that effect. You can run Awakened Awareness. Next up is Superior Anatomy. Whenever a survivor vaults a window in front of you, next to you basically, This perk activates, and then you vault that window 80% faster? 40% faster. 60. I think it's 60. Basically, Survivor Vault window, you vault window faster. And then it goes on cooldown. You can use this perk. It's not really the window perk I'd run. I'd run Bamboozle, wherever that is, over here. I'd run Bamboozle over it, but it is still a perk that you can run, I will admit. So, you know, go for it. Next up is Terminus. If you're fucking sick and tired of adrenaline, then you can run Terminus. Whenever the exit gates are powered, all survivors who are injured stay injured and are broken for 90 seconds, I think. I think it's a very long time. It's not a perk that I typically would recommend, but I'll definitely put it higher in the can use category just because of its in-game potential, which will help you, you know, hopefully make a comeback and everything, but generally speaking, I don't. Hex Face the Darkness. Whenever you injure a survivor, a Hex Totem is lit on the map, and every survivor outside of your terror radius screams in 30-second intervals. The Hex turns off when the survivor is hooked, I believe. Either hooked or down, I can't remember. But this is basically a pretty halfway decent information perk. I can put it above Terminus. This is really good on Pig for head pop builds. Generally speaking, though, it is a perk that you don't get a lot of use out of. Next up is Hubris. Now, Hubris, I can put above Face the Darkness. Whenever you get stunned by a pallet, actually, I think it's by any means. Yeah, whenever you get stunned by any means, the person who stunned you is exposed for 20 seconds. Here's the problem. 20 seconds is not long enough. If you get stunned, stuns last for 3 seconds, I believe. 2 seconds, something like that. So you get stunned, and then that person is exposed, and then part of your time is spent either breaking the pallet that stunned you or trying to go around or something like that. This perk can see use on killers like Nemesis, Demogorgon, maybe Billy, but not really. It's just a perk that I feel like you can use it, but it's better in something like a lot of people like to do Brutal, Spirit Fury, Enduring, and Hubris. That's a pretty good build. But outside of that, it's not really that great. Nowhere to Hide is a perk I highly recommend. Whenever you kick a generator, the aura of all survivors within 12 meters of you are revealed. So for like 12 seconds or something. So you kick a generator, and then you can kick a generator with Blight and then rush with Blight and just see auras pop up as you're fucking going down the lane. But most of the time, this is just good. Like a generator's being worked on. You don't really know where the survivor went. You kick the gen. You turn around. They're crouched behind a nearby rock. You go, aha, bitch. I got you. Get them. Next up is Game Afoot. Whenever you're chasing the Obsession, every time you kick a pallet, you get a 5% haste effect. And whenever you M1 the survivor with the most amount of chase time, they become the Obsession. This actually works pretty decently in pallet shredding builds, but I don't think I can recommend it, so I'm going to go ahead and put it right below Hubris, because it exists in the same plane as Hubris. It's good in pallet shredded builds, but it's slightly weaker because it only works when you're currently in chase with the Obsession. Next up is Leverage. This is a pretty fucking terrible perk. I could probably put it below Thana. Actually, I'll put it below Huntress Lullabi. Hook a survivor, gain a token. For the next 30 seconds after you hook a survivor, healing for all survivors across the map is slowed by 5% per token. This needs to be that you hook a survivor and gain a token, and then when a survivor is unhooked, for the next 30 seconds, healing is slowed. If it worked like that, it would go in the recommended, but it doesn't, so it goes in the don't use if you don't have to. Finally, we have Thwack. Hook a survivor, perk activates. Break a pallet or a wall, survivors within your terror radius scream. It's a mediocre information perk, but I can still put it below Oppression. Probably below Superior Anatomy, honestly. Forced Hesitation. Whenever a survivor is downed, survivors within 16 meters of them are hindered by 20% for 10 seconds, I believe. Might be 8 seconds, something around that. Pretty decent slugging perk. It combines very well with Knockout and Infectious Fright, and I am willing to recommend it just because if you're one of those if you're one of those players that likes to, like, boom, okay, who's in the area, you can catch him. Pretty good. Genetic limits. This has to do with exhaustion, doesn't it? I always forget what genetics limits does do. This is one of those very, very forgettable perks. I swear it has something to do with exhaustion. And my second monitor just turned off for some reason. Okay, it's back on. What the fuck? Okay, good. Awesome. Cool. I'll go fuck myself. All right. Whenever a survivor finishes the healing action, they suffer from exhausted. Oh, so it's just a fucking way better septic touch. Okay. You can use it. I'll put it above thwack, below superior anatomy. I honestly, they suffer from exhausted for 32 seconds. That's not bad, but they have to finish the healing action. I think if it was when a survivor finishes the healing action or finishes getting healed, then it would go in like recommended. Next up is machine learning. Kick a generator, then the generator you kick after that generator becomes highlighted in yellow. When the second generator that you kicked gets completed, you get haste and undetectable for X amount of seconds. Not too bad. Still not a perk that I would like recommend, but I think you can use it, and I think it goes pretty high in the can use category. So yeah. Next up, fucking perk. Alien Instinct. Whenever you hook a survivor, the furthest injured survivor from you becomes highlighted and oblivious, or becomes there. You see their aura, and they become oblivious. Don't use if you don't have to. It's not great. It's probably honestly one of the worst perks in the game. You need insane map traversal, not even presence, just insane map traversal to get a hold of it. Barbecue is better in like every sense of the way. The Oblivious just isn't worth it. So yeah. Next up, we have Rapid Brutality. Rapid Brutality goes at the very top of the can use category. The only reason it does not make it into the recommended category is because very many killers who could use Rapid Brutality need their Bloodlust. Basically, your Bloodlust gets turned off, and then every time you hit a survivor, you get 5% haste. But this perk is only useful on like 3 killers. Clown, Pinhead. Those 2, really? Like, that's maybe... Yeah, it's only those 2. I think I might have to drop it, honestly. Yeah, I have to drop it way down. Like, you can use it on M1 killers, I just don't recommend it. You need your Bloodlust for a lot. For a lot. Next up, Alien Instinct. One of the best, hands down the best info perk for killers. Open a locker. Every killer or every survivor within your terror radius for the next 30 seconds screams and is blinded for 30 seconds. And then it goes on a cooldown for 30 seconds. It is an info perk that does not rely on anybody else doing anything. It just relies on you having a terror radius and opening a locker. It's very, very good. The best info perk in the game. And I don't know what they're going to do to it in April, but which is this month, actually. Mid-chapter patch, so who knows? We'll see. Batteries included is an endgame perk. Whenever you are within 12 meters of a generator, you get a 5% status effect, haste status effect that lingers for a little bit after the game is after you leave the radius. I can recommend this. It's actually a pretty decent haste perk. The only downside is that most of the time survivors are not running you near completed generators, or most of the time you as a killer should not be near completed generators. You should be where generators are still being worked on. If you are chasing survivors to the edge of the map where generators have already been finished, you are playing the game wrong. So the last time I mentioned that, somebody was like, oh, as a survivor, I always run killers where generators are completed. That's the killer's fault for being there in the first place, but I still do recommend the perk. Friends till the end. Whenever you hook someone who's not the obsession gets their aura revealed and is exposed for 30 seconds. Whenever you hook the obsession, somebody else screams and becomes the obsession. So it's a perk that gives you continuous info upon hooks. I can highly recommend it. I think the downside of it is that if you don't have very good map traversal, it's very similar to Alien Instinct, and you're not going to get a lot of use out of the exposure, but just knowing where you're supposed to go next is very, very useful. Next up, we have Two Can Play. After you've been stunned or blinded twice, a Hex Totem lights up on the map. And then after that, every time you are stunned or blinded, the survivor gets a flashlight blind effect for 1.5 seconds. Not incredibly useful, but fucking funny. Unknown, we're here, buddy. We're here. You've been out for a week, or sorry, like 4 days actually since I filmed this video. You're here. Your window vault perk is pretty bad. After you injure survivor for the next 30 seconds, after you vault a window, you get 5% haste for like, I don't know, 10 seconds or something. It can work in window vault builds. It's one of those ha-ha funny window vault perks, but I do think that it is a little bit better than most of the perks in the can use category. So we'll go ahead and we'll put it above, actually it's much better than a lot of these, right below Superior Anatomy. Next up, I actually don't remember the name of this perk. Next up is, I think this is Unbound. This is a pretty bad perk. So this is a perk that relies on survivors missing skill checks. This is a perk that gets worse as you climb the ranks. Survivors typically don't miss skill checks, but what happens is every time a survivor misses a skill check, you get 3 tokens. Then the next time you kick a gen, you consume all tokens. Those tokens go toward 1% additional damage. So this is the 5% on top of the extra damage. So it's 1% per token, and then it's blocked for 1 second per token. Most of the time, you're at max going to get like 6 tokens, maybe. It's just a perk that relies on the survivors making mistakes is never going to be good. But I do think that it's got a lot of potential, so I'm going to put it at the very top of the don't use if you don't have to. Just barely not making it into can use. And finally, we have Unforeseen, one of the best fucking gen kicking perks in the game. Kick a gen. Your terror radius goes on the gen, and then you are undetectable for 30 seconds, and then there's a cooldown of 30 seconds. So this is just really one of the best gen kicking perks in the game. I think it's really, really fucking good. Undetectable is one of the best status effects you can have as a killer. So yeah, that's how that goes. And we did not hit the 2-hour mark again. Look at me. I'm getting so much better at these and not rambling for hours. But as always, guys, that is everything that I think. If you want to disagree with me, you guys know you're welcome to do that. Just respect my pronouns. They appeared at the beginning of the video, so respect my pronouns. That's all I'm worried about. If you want to call me a stupid fucking dumbass dipshit that has 100 hours and has never played killer in their life because of this tier list, then fucking go for it, you mad bastard. I don't really care. Do you disagree with me, fight with me, argue with me, whatever you want to do. This is my subjective opinion on the most powerful perks in Dead by Daylight for killers. And we are only on the 3rd day of a week of tier lists. So tune in tomorrow for another tier list that will be randomly chosen based off suggestions that you guys put on a community post. I can't wait to start that. So with that being said, please give a big special thank you to our channel members listed on screen now. If you want to find out how to become a channel member today and get great perks like seeing videos early, merch discount codes, and more, then please click that join button down below. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.